Welcome everybody. I'm pleased that so many people showed up tonight. And once again, I want to thank the GSB European Club to bring the event together with us. Special thanks to Steffen, Luca, and Philip. And furthermore, I'd like to thank our other sponsor, Deutsche Telekom. Tonight we have Thomas Neubert here, over there. He's representing Deutsche Telekom here in the US. And as you may know, the Deutsche Telekom offers IPTV, internet access, phone access, and mobile services in 16 European countries. And Thomas has job openings right now in process of interviewing promising candidates. So please take the opportunity to meet him after the event in our networking time if you're interested in this great opportunity.
5 jobs openings.
5 job openings. Here we go.
Okay, one more thing that I forgot, sorry. The people that did not sign up and only have a handwritten badge, if you could find Stephanie and just leave the contact information here so we have a complete list of who attended
Put the list
tonight.
out on the table.
Or give her your business card, that's fine too.
Thank you so much. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to our panel. Ladies first. I'd like to welcome Linda van der Ree, who graduated in Business Management and Tourism Management. She worked 3 years for the Michael Stich Foundation in Hamburg as a project manager and helped raising awareness for children living in Germany affected by HIV or living with AIDS. And she moved to the Bay Area in 2009, and now she works for a company, a non-profit called HopeNet. And this is a non-profit developing innovative solutions to improve the health and quality of life of young people with chronic illness. So welcome.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to welcome Fredrik Hermann. He studied information engineering and management at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. He was the former director of marketing at Jaja, an IP communication platform that was acquired by O2 Telefonica in 2009. He's currently the head of marketing for Talent House, a startup in Palo Alto. And Talent House is a platform to engage artists and brands in a dialogue with their consumers and audience across social networks. So welcome.
Thank you.
Right next to Linda, we have Jerome Collin. He was a Bachelor in Media Studies from the University of Hamburg. After he moved to the Bay Area, he worked and is currently working in the gaming industry for companies like Electronic Arts and Zynga. He's now the Vice President of Product Management at Digital Chocolate, a company founded by Trip Hawkins, who also founded, you might know this, Electronic Arts. Digital Chocolate focuses on developing games for mobile phones, iOS, and Microsoft Windows. So welcome, James. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Romain David. He graduated with a Master in Computer Science from the University of Technology in Caen, France. He worked for companies like France Telecom, Apple, and Lumos Labs, a startup that developed the Brain Trainer, where you can go online and, as the name mentions, you can train your brain. He founded his own company, Vixo, a dating site that rethinks online dating the way we know it. And he also was an MBA from Stanford, so welcome all panel. Tonight we're going to discuss how Europeans can start their professional career here in the Bay Area. And our panel will share their experiences with us, answering questions from both me and the audience. And I'd like to keep this as interactive as possible, so I'll ask some questions and then I'd like you to challenge our panel as well. So let's get started right away with some audience participation. Now that you've met the panel, I'd like to get to know the crowd a little bit better with a little survey. So how many people were born in or after 1980? Okay, thanks. You are going to be talking about millennials a lot this evening, and it's your generation that I'm referring to. So we're going to touch on that. How many of you are in school for a bachelor or master degree? Okay, thank you. And how many of you are looking for a job right now? Okay, that's good. And how many of you are founder or co-founder of a startup? Interesting. Thanks so much. I'd like to talk about all these topics tonight, and please feel free to ask questions to our startup as well, to our panel as well. I'm going to start with the first question to ease in. What was your first job out of college, and how did you get it? Maybe ladies first, Linda?
All right, my first job. So I had many jobs during my studies, and my first job was actually in an event agency. It was in the area of sales promotion, where I thought just getting a foot in the door and then move on. I really wanted to organize incentives because it's an exciting area. You have companies usually give lots of money and you can organize fancy trips. But then I kind of really fast realized that it's not what I wanted to do. And so then moved on quite quickly to the next job, which I liked a lot and stayed for a little long.
Thank you. Maybe Jerome, I know you have an interesting background.
Is it? Well, so I was in the US. I came to the US, didn't have a green card at first. Did a bunch of work then during that period, and ended up tutoring some families in the East Bay in French. And one of the parents of the kids was a general manager at Electronic Arts, and he pretty much told me, oh, like as soon as you have a work permit, can we call and we'll see how it goes. So it was really, in my case, it was really just a matter of connections, knowing the right people. And I actually was a perfect, like my background was a very good fit for the role, but I would never even known that this role existed if it hadn't been for this person there. So got lucky.
I'd like to touch another base here. During the recession, the jobs in the Bay Area shrank, and in fact there are as many jobs as there were in 1995. So what would you advise, what advice would you give the recent grads trying to get their foot in the door here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, it's, like you mentioned, a lot of connections and networking events like this. I came to the US in early 2006 and went to a lot of mixers, startup events where, I don't know if you people remember the Stir Mixer, where like startup pitched their startup for 1 minute. There's a lot of VC crowd, a lot of established companies, young startups, other entrepreneurs to connect with. And I think that's the single most important advice is to make those connections. And I've also never applied for a job, and it's always been a natural development from one to another because of people that you got to know during your work life. And you never know how important they can be in the future. You meet somebody now that works, I don't know, at IBM, and 3 years later in a different job, you'll I don't know, have a project that might fit to that, and you remember them, and maybe have the connection still on LinkedIn, and you can go back to them. Hey, do you remember we met at the GABA event in 2012? And you have that initial connection and can go from there. And it can be a business relationship, or a job opportunity, or just friends. I mean, everything can go from there. But the networking and is so important.
Well, now, as a French, do you think there's something that Europeans have to pay attention to when coming to the Bay Area and trying to get the first job here?
Let's see. I think to Frederick's point, actually, networking is helped me definitely a lot. When I moved here 11 years ago, I started to be involved in this little community. I knew I wanted to work in mobile space. I studied mobile wireless technology, wireless multimedia in France, Finland, before I moved here. And so I joined this group of people, of 10, 15 people, and those were the only people here 11 years ago working in mobile. And we put together this group that we called Bay Area Mobility Forum, and that became Mobile Monday, which is now over 3,000 people just in Silicon Valley. And just to, I would say it's not necessarily as Europeans or as French, as you said, it's not necessarily something I was used to doing back home, is to go to this networking events and try to get involved with these local communities. But that really helped create opportunities and really understand the opportunities in the market a little better. So it was not necessarily very natural, I would say, for me. And I think this is something that I also benefit a lot from.
I completely agree. As a German, we don't know the concept of networking. It's always awkward when Germans come for the first time together and try to
It's actually
network.
frowned upon, right? It's like, oh, you only get that job because you know the guy. People think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's not actually, and it's also like open up and like start conversations with like somebody, not just them, but like the only person you know. And so as a German, you have to transfer and be open. And anybody of the audience who wants to share their experience when they got here and try to network? Yeah, please.
I'm from Germany too, and I've been here for 20 years. And I like the comment with the networking. But networking is one thing. You go to events, you collect business cards, but then what? I think the most important thing, being now on the receiving end, is proper follow-up after the event, immediately. Be creative, be direct, be open, be in the person's face and follow up. If you don't follow up in a week from now, it's history. The next event goes and comes. So the follow-up is more important than just collecting the cards in the first place.
That's actually great advice. Yeah. Also, when you connect with people on LinkedIn, make it a little note how you, on what event you met each other. So when you later on want to talk to the person, you can connect and say, we met at this event and blah, blah, blah. So it's really important. Actually, when yeah.
Just to comment on that, I actually used to, that was maybe kind of crazy, but I used to actually write notes on my phone 11 years ago when I moved here, information that I knew about the person I just met. And when I met this person again, maybe a year later, I would say, you know, how's your wife, Sarah? And just to try to build this kind of personal connections. And I think overall, trying to build a personal connection is very important. Sorry.
If they're not married, remember the name of the dog or something like that. Frederick, I know that Talent House does a lot of social media to engage brands and consumers in the audience, but also in the professional, on the professional side, when you're hiring people, you go into your network and look for people, or you get approached by other people. What are you looking for when you want to hire somebody for the team?
I think the online reputation is now more important than ever, and as anybody that is looking for a job, you kind of have to see yourself as a brand and selling yourself and presenting yourself out there, and having a proper web presence to be able to be found is part of that, and of course engaging on social media as well. And you don't have to do it all the time to share everything and whatever, but nowadays pretty much any job you do will involve some sort of knowledge in social media. And if I'm hiring somebody in a communications or PR department and he has 3 tweets up in the account since 2006 or 2010 and there's nothing going on, then it's already one part of the skill set that is missing. Or, I don't know, you see a completely deserted website somewhere. The online reputation is a huge part of how you present yourself. And the first thing that I do when I get a resume is I type their name into Google and see what comes up. And so the resume is only one thing, and what you show out there is another. And of course, if your job has anything to do with skill sets that involve social media, and your presence is poor, then yeah, it's not going to work out.
Jerome, you are in the gaming industry, and I know from your resume that connections helped you in your career. Maybe you can walk us a little bit through how you moved on from Electronic Arts to Zynga and then Digital Chocolate?
Sure. So the gaming industry was kind of is a fairly established industry, at least in the retail business at this point. So there was and I'm going to use this fancy term, disruption. So there was a big disruption in the late 2000s that MySpace as a gaming platform emerged, and then Facebook now, which Zynga briefly broke $10 billion on the in market cap the other day. Now it's back on 8, I think. But so there was a huge disruption happening that the established players just couldn't monetize the business anymore the way they used to. So companies like EA or Activision, they basically had these giant publishing powerhouses where they knew how to get their games into the stores and so on. So and they had big deals with Walmart, Target, Best Buy, all these things. So now all of a sudden people started buying the games online, and people were doing free to play. And the big companies kind of missed that trend, and new companies came up, like smaller ones. And Zynga was, back when I joined, was still very small. So but there was a clear trend that people in the Bay Area started moving away from the big companies like EA or Activision or Ubisoft into the smaller ones that was coming up, and it was a bit of a gamble at the time. But I knew a lot of people that had made that move from the big established company where you have a very safe job to a smaller startup. And there was a bit of an indicator that a few like very well-known public figures, or at least in the industry well-known people, made that move to Zynga, where it kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, all right, this is not a fad. If those guys believe in it, I believe in it too. And by the time I knew probably 10 different people that had made that move from my old place, EA, to the new company, Zynga. So it was really, there was a clear like migration happening, and I just went along really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Always keep your eyes open and follow the trends and see if you want to move on. Like it's not a bad idea. Which leads to the next question actually. Millennials, which is like the next generation, are known for like frequently changing their jobs. And I'd like to know if that's something bad that you change your job very often. Would you recommend like staying at a company like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years before you move on to establish yourself? I think just move on if you think you learned enough. And is that okay? Is that something okay to do? Maybe Linda?
Well, I moved on from my first job fairly quickly because I realized that it's not what I wanted to do. In general, I think changing the job often, it depends on like what you understand for that, but I think it does make sense to stay with a company if you see the opportunity to grow and to learn from that for a couple of years, 2, 3 years. Well, of my perspective, I kind of, after like starting the first job, I moved on to the next, my next job, and then moved to the Bay Area. So I think at some point you do need to move on if you want to climb up the ladder. At some point, I certainly think that you have better chances to move on to a different company and then kind of move up then within starting the company and then continuing.
Any follow-up questions from the audience at that point? Something you would like to ask?
I mean, I think it's a different environment now that there's more younger companies out there, startups that have a much faster pace. I mean, you don't go to Siemens anymore and stay there for the next 30 years and slowly climb up the career ladder. Nobody really wants to do that. And changing jobs more frequently whenever you're unhappy is not a bad thing. But of course, if your resume looks like, I don't know, you change your job every 6 months, then I also wouldn't like to hire you because it's most likely that, I don't know, we work on the first project and maybe you get bored and then you're gone again. I mean, that's not going to be a good thing either. But yeah, I mean, the periods can shrink down to, like you said, 2 to 3 years, maybe even less than that. And of course, whenever you're unhappy and there's another opportunity, and yeah, why not? I mean, there is so much opportunity out there. Startups even go under, and then you have to look for a new job, and it's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, our parents' generation said like they live to work, but our generation is the generation that works to live. Do you think it's like a fantasy that there is a job out there that has it all, Puma?
Probably not. Jobs are probably, you have to compromise one way or another. I think, in my opinion, not as many people do a good job like doing a background check. You know, you have to, in my opinion, like it's very important to know who you're going to work for. You know, manage basically your expectations. And a lot of people who are disappointed when they join the company is they probably are disappointed for reasons. I mean, for criteria that they could actually have realized ahead of time. So I think, yeah, I don't believe like I mean, there are many jobs out there that are perfect, but you should try to find a perfect job for you. And maybe I can comment on something. When I was at Apple, like it was an amazing amazing time, amazing opportunity. I was working on the iPhone product marketing, launching the iPhone 2007, and there were also people frustrated about it because there are things that you don't necessarily like about it. The fact that you cannot do all the things on the side, the fact there are always compromises, and you have to feel comfortable with the compromises you have to accept before going to the job.
Yeah, and in contrast to that, I mean, Apple is a huge corporation and a big company, and you have more hierarchy as well. In a small team, in a smaller startup, you might have much more flexibility and freedom as well, and you're not that confined in those compromises. And to disagree a little bit on the perfect job, because the perfect job is the one that you enjoy, and if you find a company that you stand for, where you stand behind the meaning of what they do, and you enjoy your job, and it's not about the free time that you have in the evening. You already enjoy what you're doing every day, and that's the great part about the job. And I think those jobs are out there a lot. And I have a lot of friends who started their own companies or who work at young startups right now. And yeah, it's not a bad thing. We love to go into the office or get to work together and change the world and work on cool projects and be together also with a good group of people, and that's what's so enjoyable about it. And then you don't live for I don't know, the 9 to 5. You live what you're creating anyways. That's the fun part of it.
I totally agree. Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
No, I totally agree. I think, the perfect job, there's always something where you're going to be what you have to do, you're unhappy about it, but I think in general, it's kind of how you see what your goal, your career goal is. And I can definitely say, like, for me, I always my career goal is to work in a company I really find a job which I really enjoy and where I'm happy about it. And right now my job, it couldn't be better. So I wouldn't want to work anywhere else in any different area, and that shows me that it's right. So, and I think that's totally important.
I just want to share a personal thing. So when I started working 11 years ago, it was at France Telecom, 200,000 people. Then at Apple, it was about 20,000 people. Then I joined Lumos Labs, a startup in San Francisco, 20 people. And now we are 2 people in our company. So it's we're keeping the 2, but we're removing some zeros along the way. And I can tell you, so I've seen a big spectrum in terms of a big company and very small, tiny company. And yeah, and there are pros and cons in all of them. Yeah, it's about how which one you feel more comfortable, and maybe what you feel more comfortable today is not going to be what you feel more comfortable 10 years from now. What's your if you want to join a small startup, if you want to start it, there are a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience. It would be maybe a little bit harder to do what you guys are doing 10 or 15 years from now. So it's what is the right thing for the right time.
I think that's a very important part. I think there's a time and place for everything, right? And even for different personalities. Some people are just made to work in a big company and just have a safe job and just do 9 to 5 and go home, and others just love wearing 5 different hats and working 70-hour weeks. But I think that's a decision that you make, and it's important to ask yourself, if you join a startup, if you found a company, are you willing to put in 60, 70 hours, right? And is that something that's going to make you happy, and that, well, you're going to maybe spend less time with your wife or your kids or whatever that is. But if it's something, if that means that you enjoy your day's work a lot more than in a big place, then it's maybe worth it. I know I've seen quite so the industry that I work in is very, games go through a lot of crunch. It's kind of like in the movies, traditional games go through now we have a short phase and everybody goes home at 5, then you ramp up and everybody stays Saturday, Sunday till 10 p.m. and that just happens. And I just know that now I'm at a bit of a moment in my life where I don't really want to do that anymore. I want to be home. I have a little kid. I want to be home on the weekends, and I'm just not going to work. And mind you, for everybody who's here, who's actually from Germany, if you tell your friends back home that you were at work Saturday and Sunday, they're all going to think you're crazy. So it's it's a different thing, but there's a lot of benefits for it, right? It's very enjoyable to have something that you truly enjoy. I always tell my friends then, look, you're spending 40 hours or 50 hours a week working, so you better find something that you really enjoy instead of just doing something, right? It's like it's the one thing that you're going to do the most of all the things you do, except for maybe sleeping, if you like to sleep a lot.
Yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, I have a question relating to that maybe. So, have you ever experienced a little bit like Valley versus Europe? The problem of having that there's maybe some peer pressure here. Like there's so many startups, so many successful people, and it's a little bit the topic of being the small fish in a big pond here instead of maybe potentially a bigger fish in a smaller pond back in Europe. So, have you ever struggled with that concept of, you know what I mean? Like what's going on here is great, but there's so many successes. Have you ever struggled with that or not? Emily.
We're looking at Emily.
I mean, there was an article out many years ago where it was like in Silicon Valley you have the most unhappy millionaires out there because they always compare themselves with their neighbor. Maybe that goes towards that where there's always somebody bigger and somebody better and somebody more successful and whatever. But it's back to the topic that we had just earlier. It is just about what you are doing every day. And if you find a meaning in that and I don't know, enjoy the work that you're doing, and there are so many different opportunities out there, and you get to the opportunities through the networking, then yeah, you shouldn't compare yourself to those others, because there's, especially over here, and we see it every day with like, I don't know, there's numbers being thrown around that people back in Germany and my friends would like, are you crazy? What do you mean, like 100 billion? Or, I don't know, you meet somebody at a barbecue and his company got bought for $900 million US. And, you know, I mean, over here it's so normal, but it's it's not. And yeah, you shouldn't compare yourself to anybody else and just find the fun and meaning in what you do, and then everything else will come into place.
I was just telling Linda earlier that, so I got recruited by this company in Berlin recently, and my wife got all excited because she's from here, and she's like, oh, we can move to Berlin. I was like, well, you know, they don't pay anything over there, and it's just you have to understand how different it is. Just keep that in mind, you know, and maybe like life is pretty damn good, right? Like here and in Europe for different reasons, right? In Europe you get 6 weeks of vacation, and you go home at 5 or 6, and you don't need 2 cars, you don't even need a single car, right? Because actually public transportation works. I think it comes down to what your attitude is towards all that, right? Do you want to go home and be like, oh man, I'm doing something that all my friends know, or that's rocking, or am I fine just doing something smaller back home? If that's actually the problem that you're faced with. I personally, I know I find a lot of keeping up with the Joneses around here, right? It's like oh man, like I worked at Zynga, right? And I got there when there were a few hundred people, and now I have 20 new millionaire friends, right? And that's a weird thing to live with. There's a bunch of people. I'm like, how are you just like a multi-billionaire at this point? I don't get it, but it's good. I gotta put up with that.
I think the other thing is, in Europe, if you start a company, you are crazy.
Yeah.
And here, if you're staying in a big company, you are crazy. So true. It's a big difference. My brother-in-law started a company in France, and everybody around him, every single person around him, explained to him why he shouldn't do it. And that's true. And not because they are mean or they don't want him to be successful, because they are very risk averse, and because it's a culture, you know, those are the reasons why you should not quit your job to do this. As opposed to like, you know, go for it, and you can make it, you know, it's a great opportunity. And in here, you know, when I started a company, there was no single person that I met who told me why I should not do it, what I should not do what I did.
It's the other way around, right? I mean, I've had so many people ask me, why aren't you starting your own thing? It's like, what? Why would I? So it's a different mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
It wouldn't work in Europe,
What's
all this environment.
I think the culture is very different. It would be great if the culture could change, and I think it would take a lot of time for it to change. And we're starting to see that in some spots of Europe. I think Berlin is very known now for startups. There are a few areas in Europe where the culture is trying to be more open and more like Silicon Valley. But I think we still have a long way to go before most people in most countries actually are much more forward-thinking. And I think what's missing out there is role models. So a lot of places try to have the Silicon Valley of France, the Silicon Valley of Germany, the Silicon Valley of you name it, of X, and they try to put like the investment community together with the universities, which is the formula over here. But I think what's very unique about this space is role models, like the Steve Jobs, we have, and the Mark Zuckerberg, and people that you can relate to, people who've made it before, that inspire you. This inspiration is definitely lacking in some areas in the world, unfortunately.
We have a question in the back. Sorry, raise your hand.
I'm not German or neither European, but I'm from India, I'm Asian. And I think there is one issue about the aspect of entrepreneurship, why it's different here than any other part of the world. It's because America as a country is built by immigrants. It's built by people who come from all over the world. This country did not have a history 500 years earlier, right? And immigrants by nature are risk takers, they're innovators, they've left their homes in search of a living. So that's where it comes from. Whereas people from other parts of the world, they've got thousands-old civilizations. So that's kind of one thing which, so you cannot have a Silicon Valley in France or a Silicon Valley of India, for that matter. It's essentially the fabric of this country which kind of encourages innovation.
Yeah, I mean, we see this right now in London. They try to build the Silicon Valley, so let's look at them and see if they can succeed. But yeah, Roman is right. Lots of things are going on right now in Europe.
And to your point, you're absolutely right. It took me 2 years to really understand that my accent was not a negative thing here. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I was very perplexed about it. I had like a lot of meetings, and then and I remember the first time I had a meeting with the CEO of a company who had a very strong, I think it was a German accent.
Of course.
And actually was like, wow, that's great. We can have an accent here, and that's fine. We are not looked down because of that. And the reason why I was thinking that way is because I used to live in London about 12, 13 years ago. My roommate was Italian, working at Amazon in London. And she told me that every single time she had a meeting, she was judged, not because she was a woman, because she had an accent. And she had to overcome, she had to prove that she was good. Every time it was a challenge. So I was very self-conscious about it when I moved here. And it took me a lot of time to realize it was not something negative. It was actually totally normal here. And that's you're right, very unique about here.
Another question over there.
I have a question regarding social media, basically, and your views on how that is developing as in the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has been a trendsetter with respect to communication and profiling. Are we seeing even further use of this, or is the pendulum starting to swing back, where people are looking at more direct interaction and kind of networking events? Or do you have some comments on how you see this development in your recruiting process and interaction?
Yeah, I think the most important part is the personal connection and the real world connection, and I think we can all agree that those are the strongest bonds that you can make if you meet a person and look into their eyes and can build a partnership, a business partnership or friendship or just a loose connection or whatever you do. That's the core of it. And the online extension helps you to stay in touch also on those loose ties. And I'm using a tool called Reportive in my Gmail, which shows me all their social media information as soon as I open the email. And it helps me that if I'm writing back, I can see the latest 2 tweets or, the latest update on some other social network. And so it's the extension of the real world connection that is still important in keeping that connection alive. And of course, if you met somebody 2 years ago at a conference, at, I don't know, the web in Paris, and you befriended each other on Facebook after that, or on Twitter, and you congratulate them to, I don't know, their new child, then that's keeping those connections alive and are important to the real world connection.
Remember wife and child support, yeah? Remember the names, it's very important.
What was it called? Reported?
Rapported. Yeah.
Rapported.
One P or two?
Two E's.
Sounds great.
Very good, great, like, great.
We have lots of students tonight here, and I know that Romain went back to GSB to do his MBA, and Linda's taking classes right now at Stanford to broaden her horizon. How important is it to go back to school to further education versus gaining experience on the job and work your way up?
Well, I'm actually doing both. I'm taking classes, evening class here at Stanford, which are related to my job, and just to move into different areas. We do a lot of research-related work, and since I don't have, my background is totally not, my background is business and not like any research-related type work. I'm just combining it, and I can't really say neither nor. I think both is a good option. It depends on what you want to do. For me, it works fine. Going to school 2 nights a week, but for sure, depends how long, over what kind of period of time you want to do it.
Romain, what do you think about your experience doing MBA?
Well, so first of all, when I moved here 11 years ago, I think the first time I came to Stanford, I was like, wow, I was so jealous of all the students here. Like, I cannot believe you can study in this environment. Campuses in France are not like that. And then a few years later, I applied, and it was amazing to be here. It was very hard to readapt to the student, I would say, rules. And once I was one of the oldest in my class. So I spent, more time working and getting bad habits, I would say, before going back to school. So it took me some time to readjust. But it was great. And the reason why I did it is because I wanted to. I wanted to learn business. I wanted to be on the business side. I wanted to get a bigger picture, and you can't do that, possibly at work, at a job. I'm sorry. But I wanted to do that with the proper education, and Stanford was the place for me to be in, especially when it comes to learning about entrepreneurship and so on. So yeah, it was definitely the right thing for me. And again, what was right for me may not be right for the people, but that was the right thing for me.
Yeah, Jerome, you decided to work your way up.
Oh yeah, I mean, so I've been thinking about maybe I should get an MBA because everybody I work with has an MBA. And I realized that in the end, there's not much, like the ROI to business term is not there for me, because really I'm already doing the job, and I already have most of the connections because there's a lot of networking that you get out of it, and I think that's my case. But it really just comes down to what your individual position is and your situation in life, right? I mean, if in my industry, people don't really care what, at least in most cases, what your background is. It really doesn't matter what have you done lately, especially because now the actual social gaming aspect is only 3 or 4 years old. So have you worked in it or not? Nobody cares what you learned in school. But I think there's a lot of, if you want to be CEO or if you want to get funding, certainly it doesn't hurt to have an MBA, right? And that's.
And also to your point, I think if your motivation is ROI, I don't think you should go back to you should go to business school. I think the decision should be about your personal development, what you want to learn, the experience. It's 2 years of your life where your job is to learn, and that's so precious, because everything you do before and after when you work, you don't do that. You learn, but your job is to provide value for somebody or for something outside of yourself. So I think that was a very, very unique moment for me, is to spend, to learn as much as I could about different things, and also about myself.
You were still working at the time when you got your degree, right?
No, I mean,
I
went to the full-time program. Yeah.
On the other hand, you can make a lot of connections too. So if the way for you is to do your MBA, I know the CEO of my company, she has lots of connections through, she did an MBA here at Stanford too, and from that time she kind of just has lots of connections, which she's still using today and which help our company too.
There's been a lot of studies done on the millennials by the Pew Research Center. Forbes published an article recently about the millennials, and I just quote like a point out of the study that says the millennials are sometimes called the trophy generation or trophy kids, a term that reflects the trend in competitive sports as well as many other aspects of life where mere participation is frequently enough for a reward. Can you agree with that? And I give you quickly an example from my company. We have lots of 20-something working there, and we set goals. And if we reach the goals, my apartment is mostly consisting of men. So the first goal was we have a beer garden and tasting beers. And if we reached the second goal, we had a trip to Vegas. We didn't reach that goal. So we didn't go to Vegas, but we had the beer garden. So do you see this in your job and working with millennials? Do they want rewards? And is it not about bonuses? Is it about like having fun experience or fun trips or something like that? Anything you see in your everyday, maybe Freddie?
No, I don't see anybody working towards or for rewards. We have a lot of young people working at our company, and everybody is there for the greater goal of the company and really wants to do and bring this forward and be part of the startup. And sure, we have company goals, but we don't have that many rewards. We try to have, I don't know, sometimes to go out together or maybe have a trip together. Sure, that's great to have, but I don't think anybody would be working towards that as their goal for their work. The goal for the work is to achieve bigger things for the company, to grow the company, to move ahead, to do something, to grow a startup, but not for some, I don't know, $5,000 bonus that was set for a certain, I don't know, if you reach these many people.
Mm-hmm. Linda, I know that Hope Lab has a lot of fun to keep you happy. What do you think about or maybe you can share one of the two things.
Yeah, well, foundation I'm working for, they have a really great work culture, and it's not that we work towards rewards, but we do get we have a lot of, so fun, the products which we are developing are supposed to be fun for the young adults who are using it. So my company really it's important for them that we have fun at work. So we have lots of special programs for employees which have funny names like Hawks, Truffles, Fun Day, well that's obvious what it is. But it's basically to value the work you do, to have time with your coworkers, to do something special, to just, we just had last week, we just went to the movies on Friday because the Academy Awards, so everybody got a movie ticket and said, just go. We have 2 hours, see a movie and enjoy it. And so we have that frequently, and it's not that we work towards it, but it's definitely motivating.
It's part of the culture, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to say, I've been in environments where there's so many perks in that sense that people kind of get used to that and expect it, that it kind of the point becomes moot. I mean, just at my last place they had all the drinks and snacks and food and parties and quarterly trips to Hawaii if you hit your goals and all this crap. And I think they can actually be counterproductive. I think you really just want to have a good work environment and get people excited about what they do every day. But if you work people like dogs, I don't think the trip to Hawaii at the end of the month is going to make up for it. No, I feel, and people get so used to expecting, I get cool breakfast every morning, that if eventually you take it away, that people get more annoyed with it, right? I mean, and thinking they had so much crap from maid service to massages and this and that, but it really just, it's not what keeps people motivated. What keeps people motivated is having something to work for day to day and a good work environment with your team and not being driven too hard. And I think that's the one big learning that I took out of it. It's if you want to work just don't work with people too hard and think you can make up for it with little perks that you just buy with money, because that's not going to be it.
Yeah, but don't get on massages. I get this like every Thursday, and I love them.
But they're wonderful. But then, for example, right, you have one slot per every other week, and 500 people want to get in there, and all this stuff. There's always like the same with bonuses. There's almost like if you look at studies about this subject, right? There's almost as many downsides as there are upsides. So.
Well, the most important thing is appreciation, especially for women.
Very true. Very true. Maybe you can talk a little bit about startups. I know we have lots of founder of startups here tonight. Is there a cultural difference between US companies, especially like startups and companies you work for in Europe? Maybe Roman, you start on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, cultural difference.
Like working for a company in Europe versus working for a company here.
Yes, I didn't really work that long for companies in Europe. I worked for a French company for like, it was an internship for 4 or 5 months. And then I worked for an American company in London for 6 months. That's my own, that's my only work experience in Europe. But yeah, I mean, there's I would say, I work for a French company here, and overall, I would say there's the level of hierarchy. It was a big company, France Telecom, but the hierarchy is very much there, which is most American companies would be a little bit more flat, especially in the Valley. And yeah, that was something that I really, really appreciated at Apple actually. I didn't stay there very long, but people were very approachable. You couldn't really feel who was the boss of who. It was more like we were all kind of peers. And yes, people had more responsibilities than others, but it was very much more approachable than at France Telecom, for instance. But that was only from my experience.
I feel like you worked for a company in Vienna, and then you moved with the company over here, and then you started to work for Tenant House. What's your experience like moving with a European company to the US?
I mean, some of the people moved from there to here, and there was this, an advertising agency in Berlin and the startup Jaja in Vienna. So there was not a lot of cultural difference because those were the same kind of like small internet startups that then moved over here or had a similar culture of an open workspace, no cubicles, no very flat hierarchy like you just mentioned. And you can find that in Europe as well. And there's lots of startup movement going on, especially in Berlin, in Paris, and all the larger capitals, in Tel Aviv, there's a lot happening. So it's not that it's only here, but still this is the place to be. The most is happening right here.
Yeah, lots of people come here and then they get like infected by the idea I should do my own startup, right? What do you think you need to succeed in building your own startup? What should you have to go in there and start your own business? Maybe Uma, you did it.
Yeah, well, we're not successful. We haven't launched yet, so.
Positive thinking.
So I would say I think entrepreneurship here is like a virus. You may not get it when you come here, but it's a question of time. Not everybody gets it, but it's very it's in the air. It's what you breathe. And the reason why I'm saying it is because I've seen a lot of people in my class at Stanford a few years ago, where they moved here from different parts of the world, never really thought necessarily about entrepreneurship, and those people are eventually starting companies a few years later. So that's actually very inspiring to see people who get affected by this power. I would say I think the first one of the major qualities of an entrepreneur is actually you have to have a good judgment, but I would say storytelling is probably very, very important, and because storytelling can actually help you find the right partner, talk to your first customers, raise money from investors. So I would say that's definitely one of the most important skill you want to develop. And storytelling can be taught in a way. So this is I think this is very important.
Yeah, I think you need if you decide to start your own company, you need a very tough skin, and you need to know that you're going to be on a roller coaster and be open for and be able to accept failure. No internet startup just goes perfect idea, ramps up 850 million users and goes from there. It's always step back and failure and reworking your idea and improving it again and going from there. And you need a very tough skin. And as soon as you go into raising money with VCs, it can also be quite challenging, and you have to prove your idea, but you also get valuable feedback. But it's not an easy journey. It's not you just do it and you do a home run and you're going to make millions of dollars. That's not how it works. It's hard, and it's hard work. It's a lot of work, but it can also be very rewarding and a lot of fun. So it's the two sides.
I think it was Eric Ries who said that in the movies The Social Network, how many people have seen the movie? This is pretty much everybody. You see you see something could happen. We reach our first million users, whatever, and then you see this dots, and then something else happens, and then dots, something else happens. And he said that the spaces in between are the ones where it's a lot of work, it's very, a lot of frustration, it's a lot of boring stuff, and that's actually what entrepreneurship is. It's not like doing the front cover of a magazine. Some people think it is that glamorous, but it's not. It's a lot of things you have to struggle with and you have to deal with. And the highs are very highs and the lows are very low. So it's a roller coaster. It's very much true, I think.
Yeah.
How about, can I ask you two guys, how about having a product that you really believe in? Because the one thing that has really kept me from it the most is that there was nothing where I felt like, oh, I believe in this no matter what, that I'm going to stick it out for 3 years just to make this work.
And I've heard that from many people, a lot of people told me I'm just waiting to get the idea, and once I get the idea, jump on some idea I get really passionate about. I think, if you look at the companies out there who are successful, most of them change their products completely. So I think you need to be passionate and motivated by the mission, by the space, or what you want to do. And you have some ideas, but this is my hypothesis, this is what I want to build. And then you have to be open to the change based on what you learn. I think one of the biggest cause of failure is actually when you stick to the plan from day one and are not open to change. So I think it's more important to be excited about the space, excited about what you want to do. But it's okay to the entrepreneurship is all over the journey. You just have to put your first feet and then trust the fact that you're gonna find the right path. And yeah.
Hi. There's 10 of us here, and we actually are many different countries in Europe, and we're here on a tour of US innovation hubs. So it's called the European Innovators Forum, and the State Department has basically got us over for. So we started with Washington DC, we're heading to Valley for the next few days, and then we're heading to Boston for Harvard and Cambridge. So these guys are obviously all founders, and they were selected for a very rigorous process. And to ask you guys, especially since you've sort of made a move, is that how do you see? First of all, how did you see the entrepreneurship virus or lack of in Europe when you guys moved over? And do you see a change, an uptick, or do you see more people just moving here from Europe to start their companies, or some going back? And what is the kind of dynamic have you seen so far?
So do you see people moving here from Europe or other countries? Moving here to start their own company versus people here
moving back and learning from here and going back and starting companies back home. How do you see the movement happen?
So from my class at Stanford, I would say pretty much every single person from a developing, growing country went back. So people from China went back to China. People from Brazil went back to Brazil. Some people from Russia went back to Russia. The people from Europe stayed here, or tried to stay here. Some people could not, or some people, And that was again that was my experience in those 2 years. It might be different from different classes. But yeah, to your question, I meet a lot of people from Europe who come here to start their company, and there are a lot of. It's not easy, especially with visa, and, but there are many companies who actually succeed in this way. And yeah, so I meet a lot of entrepreneurs from Europe who come here to do that. Yeah.
I think another part about people from developing countries going back to China, India, also because the markets there are booming. The Western markets have kind of attained a saturation, but now those are the emerging markets and those are the growing markets. And particularly with India and China, the backlog of the visas and everything. So all that combined ensures that people, at least from India and China, are more likely to go back to India.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because the economies are booming and yeah, more opportunities.
Yeah, Steffen, you work with a lot of startups in the Bay Area. What are your experiences with these startups? What do you think are the characteristics you should have to be an entrepreneur?
Well, it's interesting. I just had a conversation with someone in this room about that. We were trying to figure out, is it the idea that's really the important thing, or is it the people? And I think as you make the rounds to all these networking events, you'll always hear either one answer or the other. And I really think it's some of both. I think you have to, as the panel mentioned, you have to be really passionate about the idea, that you can create all this personal sacrifice with your company, that you're really passionate about the idea, you're really behind it, and you have to get some investors that also like the idea. And that's sort of like finding love. You strike out about 95% of the time, but eventually you'll find that investor that likes you. And if you look at the news, all kinds of things get funded. So I think you just have to keep trying and you find the investor. But once you have that good idea, you really also need to assemble a really good founding team of all the different people of varying different backgrounds. I would really look for a team that's composed of different disciplines and from different backgrounds. And for example, we're all, maybe a lot of us here are of European descent. I think that would be great to have one European, for example, on the team, but maybe you all don't want to be Europeans unless that's really your target market. So keep a generic team together.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody who started their own company wants to share the challenges you had to overcome? Okay.
I wanted to close the loop on the question earlier in regards to comparing yourself with others that might have made it and so on. The beauty about the Silicon Valley and this place right here is that there are these opportunities out there, and there are all these small startups, and with friends you can witness all the time, and you have all the resources here. You have beautiful weather. You have the brightest minds. You have all the right people here. There's so much happening. There's so many, startups as well. And I mean, I've worked most of my professional life in the startup environment, and I can only recommend this. And maybe you want to work a year or two in a larger company with more hierarchy. But in the startup, you have the opportunity to join a small team, to really build something, to change something, but then also have the opportunity, to your question earlier, to potentially make it. And there are lots of friends that have made it through that. And yeah, you join a small startup with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and you get your 30,000 shares, your 50,000 or your 100,000 shares, and you believe in it and you work on it, and the reward is possible. And that's the opportunity that you have here. All my friends, 100% of my friends back in Germany, they work for a salary and that's it. And over here, you still get the salary, and on top of it, you have the opportunity as being part or having a part of that company that you are shaping as well and growing as well, and then maybe making it as well. It's a great opportunity.
May I just chime in? So I mentioned earlier that I was talking to this guy in Berlin, and he started a company that's pretty much akin to the American ones. It's a startup, and they have a huge valuation now, $a few $100 million, and they're doing well. But he told me that only a third of their employees even have stock, and most of them don't even consider that or ask about it. And to me, that was just outlandish, right? But it's just not part of the culture to think about the fact that, oh, like, to get people invested in the success of their company. And I noticed that very quickly when I came here, that everybody, like, even though being a big company where I know back home, well, in Germany and Europe, people would just be doing the 9 to 5s, but everybody was invested in the success of the company because everybody had stock. They had an employee stock purchase plan. Everybody was like talking about if something happened, if stock went up or down. That was just part of the culture. And I mean, if you work at Siemens, I don't think you ever look at the stock price. Like, why would you care? So that's another thing. If you have a startup, you get people invested in the success of the company.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference between like the two continents and the culture. What do you have a question?
I think you graduated from TU Karlsruhe, right? Mm-hmm. So if you compare the environment you were in over there, which is one of the well-known universities in Germany, and you compare it to here, what are the different factors? Why do you favor to be here, and what's interesting for you to stay here and to build companies here and to engage here? And why wouldn't you do that in Karlsruhe or wherever?
Because they throw so many roadblocks in your way. First of all, you don't have the VC landscape at all in Germany or any other European country. They are so risk averse. They just don't do it. And to get, I don't know, $20,000, you have to go through like 15 different banks and people and whatever. And the opportunity here, it's a completely different culture. You can only really do it here. And there's a little bit more growing now. And I just had 20 students from Karlsruhe here 2 weeks ago from the, they call it the Pioneer Garage of the Pioneers, Pionier Garage. And those are the young entrepreneurs now that get it, and they get the companies involved, and they get more VCs involved. And it's growing now, and it's getting there. But especially back then when I was studying there, that was absolutely not the case. And there were few smaller spin-offs from the university and some companies, but the environment is entirely different.
So just as a detail, you're focusing on the venture capital infrastructure that is here, and that's not over there. Talents, for example, we see in both countries, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
quite a lot of students in Germany who are top-notch, and you could just use to build your software, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, the talent definitely is there, and I mean, as we've seen, many come over here to find the right ingredients, to found their startup, to find the right people, the money, the environment, also the business connections. I mean, that's one of the beauties that it is such a combined space over here, that if you want to have a meeting with Google or with Facebook or Apple or IBM or any business partners, yeah, they are all right here. And if you do that in Europe, that's not really the case. The money's not really there, but yeah, talent is definitely there. Yeah. And the mindset is slowly changing. I mean, now they have lectures on I don't know, yeah, entrepreneurship and how you can start your own company. Yeah.
Could you elaborate where you think is the best? You want to get funding as soon as possible to start up, or would you try to not get funding as long as possible? So if you want to develop your own idea. I know it depends on the industry, but still, what's your general belief?
If you have your own funds, don't try to get the VCs on board too early. I think there's definitely two sides to that. And if you can get started and not give up too many shares, try to go as long as you can and don't take too much money from the VCs. It can definitely hurt you as well. And also your decision-making process. You know, once you have 2 or 3 VCs on board, they're gonna direct your business in a direction that makes the most profit for them, but it might not be the same vision that you have for your baby, for your company, for what you were envisioning. So I would not recommend getting, like, I don't know, VCs immediately on board. But of course, at a certain point, you might have to do the step of growing. Like, you have your prototype, you have a good product, but to be able to reach or to market to 1 million people, you need to hire 10 more people to even get there. And then you might need the 2 million or 3 million or 5 million. And yeah, there's no general rule, but it's definitely not the first thing to do.
I think it really depends on what you want to do. What obviously, you know, if you want to build like a huge infrastructure company and that requires a lot of capital, you need the money. If you want to build in the consumer or internet or consumer mobile space, now it's so much cheaper to do, to actually put your product out there and to show some traction. Then you probably don't need a lot of capital to do that, to test different ideas. And I would say, when it comes to VCs particularly, I don't think you should talk to VCs in that space, the consumer internet, the consumer mobile space, until you have traction and you see a lot of, you see that this can be a potentially huge business. Until you're there, and that may take you a lot of time to get there, I think it's smart to only get money from friends and family, angels. I think it's better bets for consumer products.
I think we had another question, same role.
Yeah, actually I was wondering, I think most of you received most of their education in Europe. And then coming with that education to the US, did you encounter any difficulties that people didn't quite know how to evaluate that you're coming from Karlsruhe or, from a good university, or that you've received a certain education, and how did you overcome this real challenge that you encountered?
I didn't encounter any problems at all. I mean, the thing is that, like, oh, you didn't go to Stanford, you didn't go to Carnegie Mellon or whatever, but at the same time, most Americans seem to think that European schools are pretty good. And I try to explain them, it's just high schools are probably better, but colleges are not that good. But people are maybe not that informed about that. I mean, I know I didn't find any of that. And of course, I didn't go to a fancy school, so I wouldn't. That's when the University of Hamburg, nobody would be like, oh man, we went there.
You get started, yeah, you have to be careful.
I think it just doesn't matter that much. There are companies who only hire from the, elite universities because they can. Like, Google gets, 700 applications on one job, and then they just throw out everything that is not, Ivy League and pick from there. But in everything else, it just depends on your skill set, of what you bring to the table, of what you can do, of what you have done in the past, and what you have learned on the job, and not if you, had great math classes in this university. Yeah. I think it's about what you bring to the table and skills as a person.
I don't meet a lot of people who actually ask me, where did you go to school? I don't think that matters a lot that much here. What matters is actually what can you do? What have you done before, as opposed to where did you graduate from 10 years ago? And I know this is super important in France. Where you graduate, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, super important. What you did over the last few years, important, but not as much. I think Germany is maybe the same, I don't know. It still matters in 10, 20 years.
I think you still submit your high school certificate when you apply for a job 20 years later. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of topics then. Is there anything additionally that you think we haven't talked about and you have another question? Yeah, go ahead.
What would you say that was your biggest mistake as an entrepreneur?
Many. Biggest mistake. I would say, maybe this is very abstract, but I would say it's so important to listen to your guts. And sometimes there is your inner voice that will tell you something, and then you're like, yeah, but it's, the best rational decision is to do this because it makes sense. And even if you're not as excited about it, you are going to do that. because it makes sense. It's great for your resume, it's great for something, whatever it is. And I think people don't listen to what they have inside. And I can tell you that I had coffee with a friend of mine from business school the other day, and he's an entrepreneur. By his soul, he's all about entrepreneurship. He started a bunch of companies before Stanford, and at Stanford he realized, I need to get a job at McKinsey because I don't have anything stable. I don't have, I went from one company to the other. I started a bunch of businesses, a lot of failures. I need to have something that would give me a lot of credibility. So that's what he did. And I saw him a couple of years after that. And I could tell, he wanted to go back to start a company. But now he feels like, he has a child, he has a mortgage, and he's still torn. It's like, I'm probably not going to do a startup. I have to maybe do something else, maybe join a growing company. And I could feel in his eyes that he was not doing what he wanted to do. And I think this is so important to be able to listen to your inner voice and say, this is what I should be doing. So maybe I haven't done that all the time as much as I should have.
So I'm not an entrepreneur because I've never started my own company, right? But I think my biggest mistake was because I came from Europe, I worked in this kind of big company, and the hierarchies were not very flat, and I stayed there too long. I stuck with what I knew and what was safe, and instead of just saying like, oh, well, screw this, I'll go somewhere else. And I stayed for like 4.5 years when I think after 2 I had probably learned everything that place had to offer to me. So if you do that kind of thing, like kind of evaluate, like if you're at McKinsey, right, or something, that just say, like, am I actually doing what I want to do, and are there other things out there? And that was definitely it. And my career has changed completely as soon as I left that place, and everything went much faster and was way more fun and way more exciting.
Yeah, and I think Oma already started our final question that I have for tonight. What's the single most important piece of advice you would give our young professionals tonight? And you said believe in yourself and believe in your dream or your passion. Maybe somebody else has a great advice for our crowd. Do you have a female perspective?
Well, just my advice to find out what you want to do, what brings you fun, just try different things, maybe during the studies, to kind of look in which direction you want to go, and then just find out where your heart belongs to which kind of job. Jerome, maybe?
No, but I kind of want to touch on the cultural aspect again, because especially since it's a German thing, right? Germany is a country of kind of risk-averse people and like humble in the sense that like exceptionalism is looked down upon a bit, and I'd say like kind of try to do away with that as fast as you can. And if somebody tells you, oh, well, why would you get that job? Because they're not gonna like you. Why would you? I know. Stop thinking, oh, I'm not qualified, or all these kinds of things. Because really, hierarchies are a lot flatter over here. And if you come over like all of us did, I think you realize, oh man, there's all this stuff I can do, and there's a lot of opportunity here. And you don't need to like sit in the same company or cube for 5 or 10 years. And if you don't move up and are not enjoying your job, then get the hell out.
Anything to add?
No, it's definitely along those lines. Find a job that you enjoy doing and not what society tells you to do. Be passionate about what you do. Especially when you're younger, you can take more risk and take it now. If there is a cool startup that you like and you like the idea, join it or found it or do it. Once you have 2 kids and the mortgage and the loan and whatever, you are definitely not as open to risk anymore. So you can do it now, and there's so many cool opportunities out there. And the best, I think building relationships is throughout your entire career one of the most important things that you can do. Not only for finding a job, but also for building business partnerships, friendships. Your entire life will be based on the relationships that you build in your life as a person, and will always be helpful. And maybe not now, but maybe in the future. And now we have so many ways to manifest and maintain those relationships online. use those tools from LinkedIn to Facebook to Twitter to Reportive to whatever it is. Congratulate somebody to their birthday. It's all out there and it's at your fingertips. You don't have to do that much, apart from joining some networking events like these.
Yeah, great networking events like this. I'd like to thank our panelists for coming out tonight and sharing your experience. I think we learned a lot. I did. I have to give up massage, so probably. And I would like to thank you for coming tonight, and I hope you learned a little bit. We have the room in the line, so you can still network a little bit. Yeah, maybe get in touch with our panelists and ask them some questions you didn't like to ask in front of everybody. And yeah, thanks. Have a good night.